Week 13, Overview, Victorian England. This week, we'll be learning about Queen Victoria, the things that were going on around the world as she took up her reign, and everyday life in Victorian England. There are so many interesting details to notice. How does a queen fall in love and get married? How did Victorians live without refrigeration? What did they think about the great changes that industrialization thrust upon them? Were they all happy in these new ways of living? What were the challenges they faced? These and many other questions will be answered by your family's readings and discussions this week. Dialectic students this week will have a central focus on Queen Victoria's life and the waves of revolution that were rippling through Europe as she came to her throne. Rhetoric students studied these last week. Next week, dialectics join rhetoric students in studying everyday life in Victorian England and presenting mini reports, while younger students will learn about the history and geography of Australia and New Zealand, two substantial holdings in Great Britain's global empire. This is a good week to review the geography of Great Britain. Younger children need to recognize the four countries that came together to form the United Kingdom in 1707. England had absorbed Wales in the Middle Ages and took over Ireland by 1603. Scotland and England were formally united in 1707 under James, who was King James I of England and James VI of Scotland. If your child enjoys geography, take some time to look over a map of the British Isles. You should see lots of names, and you'll recognize some of them from history and literature. Then take a world map and see how small Britain really is, yet how much of the world it controlled under Victoria. So, how did Victoria become queen? It wasn't an easy or obvious path. George III, her grandfather, who lost the American colonies, eventually became mentally ill. His son, George IV, ruled in his place for many years before he officially became king. He died childless and was succeeded by his brother, William IV, who had at least 9 living illegitimate children when he was crowned, but even after he finally got married, he never had a child who could inherit the throne. The nearest legitimate heir to the throne was 18-year-old Victoria, his cousin. When she took up her scepter, England's confidence in the British royal family was at a very low ebb. On June 20th, 1837, Victoria was awakened by her mother, the Duchess of Kent, who told her that her uncle the king had died. In her diary, Victoria wrote, "I was awoke at 6 o'clock by Mamma, who told me the Archbishop of Canterbury and Lord Conyngham were here and wished to see me. I got out of bed and went into my sitting room, only in my dressing gown, and alone, and saw them. Lord Conyngham then explained that my poor uncle the king was no more, and had expired at 12 minutes past 2 this morning, and consequently that I am queen." Her coronation took place on June 28, 1838. She was to become England's longest reigning monarch to date, and the symbol of her era. Victoria reigned almost 64 years and died in 1901. Victoria proposed marriage to her first cousin, Albert. He wasn't at all sure he wanted to be married to a queen. Albert didn't care for the social life at court, and he had no desire to leave his homeland of Germany for England. Marrying Victoria would not make him king, just Prince Consort, a title with no job description. He feared that would put a strain on their relationship, and their early marriage proved him right. As time passed, however, they got the kinks out of their unique marital relationship and became a loving couple with 9 children. Victoria came to respect and rely on Albert's advice and opinions, and he greatly influenced her reign. Their love was so strong that when Albert died at an early age, Victoria was devastated. She did not appear in public for the next 3 years. She wore black until her death, 40 years of mourning. Victoria and Albert's royal children married into European monarchical families. Victoria came to be called the Grandmother of Europe. Victoria carefully rebuilt the reputation of the British royal family. An increasingly democratic world had less and less use for kings to govern the people, but the kings who preceded her didn't seem to see that. Their private and public lives caused people to question whether they needed a royal family at all. Victoria turned that around. She was a hard-working queen who really cared about her people. She realized that the actual government of Britain had to be handled by elected representatives, and she chose to become a symbolic ruler. In doing so, she became a symbol of her age. Vast and sweeping changes were taking place during Victoria's reign. The bulk of her population moved from agricultural life to urban life, as manufacturing centers, like factories, replaced cottage industries. As urban centers quickly swelled, British leaders and society members were often at a loss as to how to change and grow with them. For the laboring poor, life was harsh, often short. The lives of laboring men, women, and children were filled with grueling toil and desperate poverty and almost no hope. As students learned, the laboring poor lived in horrid housing and working conditions until reforms began to take hold in the 1850s. There's a lot of detail on this topic in the teacher's notes this week. Rhetoric students are reading a French work this week, Les Miserables, which can be translated The Wretched. Victor Hugo's classic of literature provides a picture of life for the industrial poor in this era in neighboring France. Generally speaking, power in England shifted from the aristocracy to a growing middle class. Wealth came to be measured in money and possessions rather than land and heredity, although aristocrats still retained their social status. Middle-class life was increasingly comfortable, even opulent. Victorians had lots of leisure but no modern entertainment centers, so they invented a lot of what are now considered old-fashioned entertainments. They invented parlor games like 20 Questions and charades, and played board games, card games, even pick-up sticks. They called that jackstraws. Your child may have researched how poor city children lived during this time. If you're familiar with stories like Oliver Twist, why not watch the movie with your kids? Charles Dickens' classic tale of an orphan boy in London has been put on screen more than 20 different times. The musical version, Oliver, has been simplified a lot, but has some unforgettable songs. Most of the other video versions are also simplified, but they all paint a good picture of life for a poor boy in Victorian London. If Oliver Twist isn't a good fit for your family, there are many other Dickens novels that have been made into movies. The best ones are the long BBC adaptations. These include Our Mutual Friend, Martin Chuzzlewit, Bleak House, Hard Times, and Great Expectations. The dialectic literature assignment this week is David Copperfield, and the BBC has made a great 3-hour movie out of that masterpiece. Dickens isn't the only Victorian author to produce good movie material, though. One of our favorites is North and South. It's long and, let's face it, it's a chick flick, but it's a really good chick flick. It's a 4-part adaptation of a romance between an upper-class girl from the south of England who has to move to a mill town in the north. Young Margaret Hale is torn between her sympathies for the mill workers and a handsome, hard-bitten capitalist who falls in love with her. Your wife and older girls will love it. There's lots of good fiction about the Victorian era, but some of the most fascinating stuff isn't on the fiction shelf, because it's true. Dialectic level students who are doing our church history track should be reading about George Muller this week. Muller was born in Germany, and he grew up wild and wicked, but his father decided he wanted George to become a pastor in the established church. He went to the university to study divinity, and amazingly became a devout Christian who wanted to serve as a missionary. Muller moved to England to bring the gospel to the Jews who lived in London, but he wound up as the pastor of Ebenezer Chapel in the city of Devon. He married Mary Groves, the sister of a man who's been called the father of faith missions. After George married Mary, he started making some changes in his church. He stopped taking a regular salary because he thought it tempted his flock to give out of duty instead of delight. He stopped the common practice of renting church pews to pay the minister's salary because it set the rich apart from the poor. In time, Muller moved to Bristol, where he and Mary decided to open their own home up to 30 orphan girls. Before long, he was operating 4 orphan houses. By 1870, the Mullers were caring for 2,000 orphans. All this would have been impressive if Muller had been your typical philanthropist who raised money for charitable projects in customary ways. Muller was anything but typical. He refused to ask anyone for money, ever, and he refused to go into debt. By every earthly standard of human wisdom, Muller should have failed. Instead, between 1836 and 1871, Muller educated 23,000 children in his schools, plus many thousands more who were educated elsewhere at his expense. While all this was going on, Muller managed to distribute 64,000 Bibles, 85,000 New Testaments, and 29 million other religious books. He also supported 150 missionaries, and he did all this without any kind of fundraising. He made his needs known to God alone. Well, Victoria's reign saw huge changes in Great Britain and the world. The Industrial Revolution transformed virtually every aspect of British society. Because of these changes, there was much misery that went along with the astounding advances of humankind. It's exciting to read about heroes like George Muller who responded to so much misery with so much faith. The 1830s and 1840s were difficult and perplexing times for leaders and subjects alike. After the 1850s, reforms were instituted that eased things more and more, and the British Empire expanded so much that by the end of Victoria's reign it was a common saying that the sun never set on the British Empire. The time when all of these changes and growth occurred has long been called the Victorian era, after the long-lived queen who presided over it.